Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Vedanta Life Academy. In our final class, I believe this is going to be our final session for this summer until we have a summer recess. So welcome to the pilgrimage. And before we begin any pilgrimage, we'll begin with the chant. This is an offering to the divine. If you know this chant, please chant along. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Avir Avir Maeti Rudrayate Dakshina Mukham Tenamam Ahinityam Tenamam pahi nityam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to mortality. Light us through and through, and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. Well, welcome back, everyone. We weren't expecting to have another talk, but because we had an unfinished pilgrimage, and many of you really liked the journey. In fact, many of you had talked about how it was spiritually uplifting, like doing spiritual practices. You felt that you had been just very much uplifted and taken away in this journey. So we can't leave any journey incomplete. So today, Swami Chidekananda will finish this journey of the Sacred Pilgrimage, Part 2. And before we begin, I just do want to say that Swamiji is the city editor of the Prabhuta Bharata magazine, which is an English magazine started by Swami Vivekananda. I believe the first magazine started by Swami Vivekananda. And Swami himself has traveled to many places throughout India. He has gone to, we talked about 12 Jyotirlingas. We didn't talk about, but there's some famous places, Kedarnath, the four Char Dhams, Kedar, Badrinath, Amarnath, and Gangotri. Also, he's gone to Kailas. And so he's really made this a part of his spiritual practice, to travel and go to all these journeys, and he's had his own experiences with these different travels. So he speaks from his own experience, and that's why I believe has so much enthusiasm in doing research about these pilgrim areas, because part of the practice, like japa, meditation, is going on pilgrimage. And it's a wonderful practice that is easy to do. You know, they say on a pilgrimage that the journey itself is very difficult. To get to Kailas, it takes you about, I believe, about 8 days. And then when you get there, and the whole purpose is during that travel is you're cleansing the mind, because you're going through a lot of austerities to get to the destination. And once you get to the destination, when you're with your mind cleansed through the travel, through the impurities being burnt, through all the austerities you had to go through to get there, then what you do is you see the living presence of the divine when you're there. And that's what we call darshan, seeing the living presence of the actual manifestation of God. So when we talk about these pilgrimage areas, they're not just nature, seeing great, beautiful mountains or beautiful sceneries. They're actually seeing the living embodiment of the divine reality. And you do that journey by going through all the austerities to get there. So instead of taking a helicopter, say, to Kailas, you miss out. You can see it with the regular eyes, sightseeing eyes. But what we're doing is you're trying to see it through the eyes of a pilgrim. And so that's what Swami's talking about today in his journey. So let's welcome Swami Chidekananda back. Thank you, Swamiji, for continuing on in this journey. And let us begin the second part of this journey.
Okay, just begin. Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarva dharma swarupine Avataro Varishthayo Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Good morning, good evening, everybody. So like Swami said, we're going to begin the second part of our pilgrimage. And just one point to note that many of the pictures you're going to see today, we got them from this new book by Swami Chidekananda. It's called Sri Ramakrishna, A Divine Life in Pictures. And I think they're selling that at the Vedanta Society of St. Louis. And those of you who are staying in India, we're carrying some copies in Advaita Ashram. So those of you who are interested, please go to the website. So like Swami said, we're going to now begin the second part of our pilgrimage. And we're going to once again begin it by going back to San Diego and picking up Swami Harinamananji, who has not been there since 2010. So Swami, please start the video.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just start this video here. Okay, share screen.
Okay, Swami, is your seatbelt fastened? Okay, let's now go to India. So we're going to go to Dakshineshwar, and as we're arriving in Dakshineshwar, we're playing one type of music called Shanai music, which was played from the concert towers in Dakshineshwar during Thakur's time. Swami, you can pause it right there. Okay, that's it. Okay. Okay, so we're going to continue where we left off from last time. So all of you know, we won't go backwards, but last time we went through the Garbha Mandir, Nat Mandir, Radhakanta Mandir, the 12 Shiva temples, the Chadni, Sri Ramakrishna's room, and I think Kutibari. So now we're going to go right here. This is the Nahabat where Holy Mother stayed. So Holy Mother lived in this Nahabat from 1872 to approximately 1885. And during this time, often she would go to Jairambati and come back. So this is an old picture right here of the Nahabat. Can anybody tell me something unusual about this picture? Any guesses? Okay, so let's take, the distance, this is where Holy Mother stayed. And this is Sri Ramakrishna's room. Remember, this is the front entrance facing the Ganga. So the distance between here and here is about 75 feet. And this site you won't get anymore. Today, there's a Rani Rashmani temple in the middle right here. But this was the time. So you can see Holy Mother's temple at this time. She can have a clear view of Sri Ramakrishna's room. Let's just go back. She can have a clear view of this part right here. So the unusual thing about this, you remember in the Great Master of the Gospel, especially the Great Master and the Life of Holy Mother, they said Holy Mother was too shy. At that time, she could not really enter into Sri Ramakrishna's room when the devotees were there, especially the male devotees. So what she would do is, these are the bamboo, what you call bamboo curtains, porda in Bangla. And she would like make holes right here, and she would see from here. She would see the play of Sri Ramakrishna taking place. So sometimes Sri Ramakrishna would see Holy Mother make that these holes are getting larger and larger. So she would tell his nephew Ramlal, "Ore Ramlal, tor kuri pordar fak boro hocche." So the holes in the curtain are getting larger. So he was just poking fun at Mother, but unfortunately Ramlal took it seriously and patched up the holes. Now, what's really amazing about this, let's just think about the austerity that Holy Mother did while living in this home, while living in this place. Sometimes I sometimes complain here that, oh, I don't have cross ventilation in my room, things like that. Holy Mother, when staying here, this room inside is only 50 square feet. It's octagonal in shape. The width is only 7 feet 9 inches across. And I can't tell you how small this is. And not only that, but 3 or 4 people would stay here at a time. And there was no ventilation except in the front. In the back, there's a door, a small door, but it's very low and it's normally not open. And the sides are also closed. So this was the only place that you could get ventilation, and even that was boarded up. So she stayed here for so many years. Her mother-in-law, Chandramani Devi, she stayed up here. And you may recall, Sri Ramakrishna and her mother used to stay here in the Kuti Bari with Sri Ramakrishna's nephew, Akshay. In about 1869, when Akshay passed away, Sri Ramakrishna's mother did not want to stay there anymore. So she moved here to the Nahabat on the upper floor, and Sri Ramakrishna would stay here. Okay? So lots of times Holy Mothers, when she needed something, she would call Holy Mother downstairs, and Holy Mother would come running up. And when she would run up the stairs. These are the stairs in the back that she would run up. So at that time, this door ceiling was so low that she would bang her head often against the door because she's not thinking about her own safety. She's just running up to attend to her mother-in-law. And this is a water jug that she used to keep from Holy Mother's time, and it's still there today. It keeps the water cool during the summer times, so they keep water in here. This is the stairs going up to the upper floor of the Nahabat. And this is right next to there. This is where Holy Mother used to do her cooking. So this is an excerpt from Swami Chidekananda's new book. We put it on here. So let's continue now. So now we're going to go to the Bakutola Ghat. This is the bathing ghat where Holy Mother used to take bath. So she would come from right here. This is the Nahabat. Every morning, she would wake up before 3 a.m. and she would come down here and take her bath. And you may recall the incident that one time as she was entering down below, she said she saw a crocodile. So after that, she would take a lamp with her when she went downstairs. And you can just see, this is a very old picture of Dakshineshwar. So you can see how green it was at that time. This is where Sri Ramakrishna practiced his sadhana, the Panchabati. Now, another interesting story about this ghat. And you see, this is, if we look at our map, this is the Nahabat. So the Bakutola Ghat is right about here. And another interesting incident about this is where Bhairavi Brahmani, she came down this path. She came from the north side, south. And if you read the description in the Great Master, she first arrived here. And as she was climbing the steps, Sri Ramakrishna was picking flowers here. And as she was climbing up, Sri Ramakrishna then told his nephew Hriday, he ran back to his room over there, and he told his nephew Hriday to call her in. And another thing with Bhairavi Brahmani, after she stayed there when she first came, she stayed for a couple of days in the Panchabati. But then Sri Ramakrishna was a little bit concerned how it would look that if a lady staying here, what the people would say. So he arranged for her to stay. There's place called the Bhairavi Brahmani Mandal Ghat, and she used to stay here. And some devotees used to provide her with food, and she would cook her own food. So that ghat is still there today. And it's interestingly right next to Sri Sharda Math. So now let's keep continuing. So now we finished the Nahabat, Bakultola Ghat. Now let's go to the Panchabati. So now this is a little bit of a quiz. So those of you who can answer, you can send it in through chat. What are the 5 types of holy trees which form the Panchabati? Any replies? Okay. Swami, anybody? No. Okay. The Panchabati, there's 5 types of trees. The Amlaki, Ashoka, banyan tree in Bot, they call it. The Vilva tree, we call this the bell tree. And the Ashwatha tree, or what they call the Bodhi tree. I think this is also in the Hollywood Vedanta Society. So these are the 5 types of trees in the Panchabati. Now, interestingly, let's go again. This is an old picture of the Panchabati. So this is where all of Sri Ramakrishna's experiences regarding Saguna Brahman, all the visions he ever had, many of them took place here. Many of them took place here. And this is where he did all of his sadhana. And if you go today to Dakshineshwar, you can't imagine so much greenery there. Now there's just a couple of trees. It's very sparsely populated with trees nowadays. But these were the original trees this is where he sat. And these were the original trees that he sat under. So this is the banyan tree that Sri Ramakrishna would sit under, an old picture of it. And in 1900, Swami Virajananda, a former president of our order, he came and visited Dakshineshwar. And just to get an idea, from here you don't get an idea of how large this tree actually is. But when you see Swami Virajananda sitting here, you can see how large it actually is. Now, another thing about this tree, the Panchabati, it said that in about 1858, This is called the Haspukur. Another name for it is the goose pond, goose tank. So it is said in around 1858, 1859, Sri Ramakrishna, with the help of Hriday, they redid the Panchabhati. And Sri Ramakrishna planted the Amlaki tree and Hriday planted the other trees. And they actually took mati or mud from below this goose tank, and they used it to fill this area up. Before, it was very low land. And so during this time, Sri Ramakrishna had many visions. So he had the vision of Sita with Hanuman, of Mother Ganga, Ram. I'll just read from one part of what it says. One day, as I was seated under the Panchabhati, I was in a state of ordinary consciousness. All of a sudden, a luminous female figure of exquisite grace appeared before me. Her radiance lit up everything around her. I could see her. Slowly, she advanced towards me from the direction of the north, all the while looking at me with gracious eyes. I was wondering who she might be when suddenly a monkey uttered a cry, fell at her feet, and rolled on the ground. Then it came to me in a flash, this must be Sita, the daughter of King Janak. So it says one thing, that she came from the north side and she approached Sri Ramakrishna as he was in the Panchabhati. And it said that afterwards she merged into Sri Ramakrishna. So they say one thing about Sri Ramakrishna's smile, he has her smile. If you see the smile of him in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that smile comes from her. Another vision he had in the Panchabhati was of Mother Ganga, that she came and it was devouring. She came with some babies, devouring the babies. He observed the process of Shrishti Sthiti Vinashini, the process of origin, sustenance, and dissolution. He also had vision of Ram there. But as we'll find out later on, it was not only restricted to Hindu gods and goddesses. Later on, he also did practice Christianity and also Islamic sadhana here. So now let's go next to here. We're at the Panchabhati right now. And from here, we are going to go to his Advaita sadhana. They call it sadhana kutir. Okay. So this is Sri Ramakrishna's sadhana kutir. And this is how it is today. And this was during Sri Ramakrishna's time. And this is from Swami Chidekananda's new book. So you can read there. So what happened here was that Totopuri came in about 1864, after Sri Ramakrishna had already practiced his Advaitics, has practiced his sadhanas under Bhairavi Brahmani. And when he came, he finished his pilgrimages. Another important point to understand about Dakshineshwar, there was a significant change that took place in Dakshineshwar after 1861. Up to 1861, Rani Rashmani was in charge of Dakshineshwar. She left her body in 1861. So up to this point, Dakshineshwar was simply like a resting home for pilgrims. They would come, they would spend a few days here, then they would leave. They would come because lots of people would come from all over India to Puri and Ganga Sagar. And from there, they would come down to Dakshineshwar, which was not that far away. So it was like a resting home. You can stay for a couple of days. But after Rani Rashmani passed away, what Sri Ramakrishna did, he encouraged Mathur Babu, his right-hand man, to make Dakshineshwar a place especially for spiritual aspirants of all denominations, to treat them really well. So as a result, once reputation spread about Dakshineshwar, that it's a place where not only people can come and take rest, especially monastics, but they can also do their sadhana, spend months or years in Dakshineshwar and do their spiritual practice, and they'll be provided with the basic necessities. So then word of mouth spread all over India, and then people started coming. So Bhoiravi Brahmani came in 1861, then Totapuri, Jatadhari, so many monks from so many denominations, Govinda Roy, the Islamic Sufi. Now, let's just see what Swami Chidekananda says about here. The view of the Sadhan Kutir shows the twisted stems of the Madhavi vine planted by Ramakrishna. So we talked about some of the trees that were planted by Thakur. So they were still present at that time. So I don't think this is the original building. Maharaj writes that this picture was taken in 1935. But one thing about this building is that, one thing about this site, you might recall that Sri Ramakrishna, Totapuri, when he first met Sri Ramakrishna, he saw a fit spiritual aspirant. So he wanted to initiate him into sannyasa. Then what did Sri Ramakrishna say? Okay, but I'll have to ask my mother. So Totapuri thought he meant his own mother, but he actually meant the Divine Mother. So Swami Chidekananda writes, because Totapuri was a strict non-dualist, so he talks about the smile of derision that must have been on Totapuri's face when he first heard this. So anyways, Totapuri asked Sri Ramakrishna to assemble all the materials for sannyasa. So he assembled it inside the building. Then they had the sannyasa ceremony. Viraja Homa fire took place, everything took place. But then when Totapuri asked Sri Ramakrishna to meditate on the non-dualism, at that time, Mother Kali kept coming to Sri Ramakrishna's mind, and he could not remove her. So what did he do? There was a piece of glass in the kutir. So he took it and he put it between his eyebrows and he said, Ekhane dhyan koro, meditate here between the eyebrows. So after that, Sri Ramakrishna went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and for 3 days, he was just inert. And Totapuri would often leave and then come back and check on him. He would check on his pulse to see how he is doing. And he was just really amazed that what took me 40 years to accomplish, Sri Ramakrishna, he did it in just 3 days. Afterwards, they said that Sri Ramakrishna was in a state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi for up to 6 months at one time. And I believe that Totapuri, he only planned on staying a couple of days in Dakshineshwar, but he spent about 11 months or so. And he left in the year 1864. So now we've finished, right? We've gone Nahabat, Bakutola Ghat, the Panchavati. Afterwards, I'll quiz you all on the 5 different trees of the Panchavati. So remember the Advaita Sadhana. This goose tank, when you read the Kathamrita or the Gospel, every day in the morning time, Sri Ramakrishna, he would go here and do his morning ablutions, washing his mouth and those types of things. And I believe sometimes he would even take bath here. Sometimes he would take bath, usually in the Chandni Ghat, but it also depends upon his mood as well as his health. For more about this, you can read Swami Chidekananda's Ramakrishna as we saw him. Ramlal Chattopadhyay, Sri Ramakrishna's nephew, he talks about Sri Ramakrishna's daily routine. So that's one type of nice meditation, reading about his daily routine with this map and just following along. Now we go to the Panchamundi, the place of his tantric sadhana. That's right here. In this map, it's about right here. Now, when Bhairavi Brahmani came, she wanted Sri Ramakrishna to practice the 64 disciplines of tantric sadhana. So it's here that he practiced, under this bell tree, that he practiced these 64 disciplines successfully. So here it says, Dakshineshware Sri Ramakrishna Tantra Sadhana Stul Bel Tola. So this is, I don't know, this is like one of the original trees that he probably sat under. Again, this is from Swami Chidekananda's book, and this is how it appeared in 1935. So you could see how large it was at that time. Next to this is the gun factory. Today, this is called the Winco Match Factory. It's still a factory where they produce matches, those types of things. At that time, they were making gun ammunition, the powder, and today they make matchsticks here. Okay, so this is a picture of the bell tree at that time. So you can see how large it was at that time. And here's a picture of the tree today. You can see it's very small. It probably only goes to about right here. Another thing about the Beltola Panchamundi here, Panchamundi means 5 skulls. So they said that when Sri Ramakrishna did his sadhana, at one point he did it with 5 different types of skulls. One of them was a human skull, and there's 4 other types of animal skulls. And after he had successfully completed his sadhana, they took those skulls and they immersed them into the Ganga. Another interesting thing, Swami Vivekananda, at one point in his spiritual practice, he had the vision of the Brahma Yoni. It's like a triangle, multicolored triangle. So he told Sri Ramakrishna about it. And Sri Ramakrishna also affirmed, yes, when I was practicing my spiritual sadhana here, I also had that same vision of the Brahma Yoni. And he said from that, that's actually, you're seeing the Yoni means like the uterus of the woman, of the mother. And this is like the cosmic uterus from which worlds are coming out and dissolving. Now, I just wanted to show a picture right here of, we took this from Google Earth. So you could see that Dakshineshwar is right here. This is the goose pond. So where Sri Ramakrishna practiced his sadhana, his tantric sadhana, would have been probably about right here. And on the other side, there's a gun factory. Today it's a match factory. So you could just have an idea. And many Sikh soldiers used to stay here at that time. So Sri Ramakrishna would come and visit them. This is Sharda Mat Ashram today. And again, this is where Bhairavi Brahmani used to stay. Okay, so now a new topic, the history of Islam and Dakshineshwar. So last time we talked about that in the 1850s, 1847, Rani Rashmani received a dream from Mother Kali to build a temple along the bank of the Ganga. So she looked for a place. She found this place and she began to build. Now, the interesting thing about Rani Rashmani, when she started this in about 1848, she was not just the type like a hands-off person. No, when they were during the construction itself, she used to stay at the Kutir Badi, which we already saw. She used to stay here. And she would come and supervise the building. Now, what happened was, during this time, in about 1847, one of the things we have to understand about Dakshineshwar, it was also part of it was a Muslim graveyard beforehand, before she had purchased it. So one day at nighttime when she was sleeping here, a great Muslim saint, Ghazi Pir, a 12th, 13th century Muslim saint warrior, he appeared to her in a dream and told her to make a platform. There's a peepal tree on the premises. Let me see if I can show you. Where is it? There's a peepal tree on the premises. So this is not on this map here, but it's approximately right here. And here it would be about right here. And it's really interesting. He said, I reside under this tree, so please come here and make a platform and offer me some sini, one type of prasad, and lamps, and I'll protect you. I'll protect the construction. I will reside here and protect the place. Now, there's really an interesting thing about this. I'll just read it. I just did a little studying on Ghazi Pir, who he was, and it said that he was a Bengali Muslim Pir or saint who lived in the 12th or 13th century during the spread of Islam in Bengal. He was known for his power over dangerous animals and controlling the natural elements. So during the 12th and 13th century, Muslims started to come to India, and they started to populate some densely populated places. So at that time, this Dakshineshwar would have been like a pure forest. So it says, as the new local Muslim population of southern Bengal was settling in the dense forest of the Ganga, these were important qualities because they said that he could protect them from dangerous wild animals. So for a long time, he was worshipped. He was like almost like you can say like a tribal deity, and he was worshipped by the tribals and those staying in the forest, both Hindus as well as Muslims. But the difference with him, he taught that everyone is equal, no matter the caste or the religion, and that we should all live in harmony with nature. So Rani Rashomani paved this residence with bricks and used to offer something called shinni. This is like one type of banana pudding, and deepa lamps. And interestingly, it has it that Sri Ramakrishna, during his 3 days of Islamic sadhana, which we will talk about, he also used to come here every day during those 3 days and offer sini and deepa. And I think even today, I see that this is a picture of the place today. They still offer lamps every day. I don't know about the prasad, if they offer or not. So continuing on our journey, around 1865, a Sufi mystic Govinda Roy came to Dakshineshwar to practice intense spiritual practices under the Panchavati tree. Again, what we talked about before, after Sri Ramakrishna had kind of taken over charge of, made Dakshineshwar a very hospitable place. And Dakshineshwar, after Rani Rashomani's passing, because she was unfortunately, she was a lower class person, considered a lower caste person, Koivata caste, fisherman caste. So still there was some hesitancy amongst the vast pilgrims, especially monastics, to come to Dakshineshwar. So when Sri Ramakrishna overtook charge, they started to associate Sri Ramakrishna with Dakshineshwar. And as we said, Mathur Babu made the place very hospitable for serving pilgrims. So Govinda Roy came, and he practiced Islamic sadhana here. Sri Ramakrishna, when he saw Govinda Roy practicing, he was very charmed by seeing his intense yearning to realize God, realize Allah. So he wanted to take instruction from him. And Govinda Roy gave him the Allah mantra. So for 3 days, he would practice intense sadhana according to the Islamic traditions. Now, they said one thing about Sri Ramakrishna: when he does something, he cannot do it halfway. He has to do it with his whole life force. Mane pran theke, antarik theke korte hobe. So he has to do it from within. So what happened was he started wearing Muslim dress as well. He refused to go inside any of the temples. He did not go inside and salute Mother Kali during these 3 days. None of the Hindu deities. In fact, it's said that he didn't care about social customs. He wanted to take, in that mood, he did not care about social customs. He wanted to take forbidden Islamic food. And Mathur Babu was very horrified at that. So he was thinking, if Sri Ramakrishna does that, then he'll be kicked out of the temple by the Orthodox Brahmins. So what he did in the Kutibadi, he arranged for a Hindu cook to come, a Brahmin cook to come and prepare Islamic food, some Islamic food, under the guidance of a Muslim cook. Now, here's another trivia question. This is difficult. Let's see if anybody gets this. What was the name of the nearby mosque during this time in Dakshineshwar, which Sri Ramakrishna used to visit? Molla Para Masjid. And so it was in this mosque Sri Ramakrishna used to go every day. And it was really interesting. During these 3 days, Hridoy used to find Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna had a daily routine, and Hridoy would come and visit him every morning. But during these 3 days of his Islamic sadhana, he could not find Sri Ramakrishna. Where did he go? He would go to his room, didn't find him there, go to the temple, go to all the usual places, could not find him anywhere. What Sri Ramakrishna used to do during this time, there's a rear entrance. He would exit this rear entrance and go by, make a left turn. At that time, there was this old mosque. Now it's no longer there. Now I think there's one Canara Bank there. And he would go there and practice his Islamic sadhana. He used to offer namaz there 3 or 5 times a day. If you want to know more about this, you can read a book written by Swami Prabhananda ji. It says more about Ramakrishna, more about Ramakrishna. So this is the mosque. It was then in a very dilapidated condition. And unfortunately, today there's no trace of it. Now we're in for a treat because we did some research and we found a lesser known incident that's not even in the Leela Prasanga, the Great Master, or the Kathamrita. It was written in an article September 1955 of Prabuddha Bharata. It's called 2 Episodes. So what happened was this. Sri Ramakrishna used to, during his days in Dakshineshwar, he used to go and visit many places. So one of his favorite destinations was Kali Ghat. And Kali Ghat is located right here. Now this is a mosque. So Manmata Ghosh, at the time he met Sri Ramakrishna, and he narrates this in 1955, that he was working in this area off of Chitpur Road. And as he was working here, dusk was coming. And then he sees an Islamic devotee just outside, just crying for God. And he was so, Manmata Ghosh was so stunned by the sight that he just looked, it was just a beautiful sight to see anybody, whatever the religion, just earnestly crying for God. So he was just stunned by that devotee just crying for Allah. Then what happened next? He saw Sri Ramakrishna was riding, this is the type of horse carriage they used to use in the 19th century. So he exited from there and he came running and he embraced that devotee. And they embraced for a long time. So we did the research on this. And what happened was that Sri Ramakrishna had gone to Kali Ghat, evening time, Arati over. So he and Ramlal are coming back. This mosque is on the road, Chitpur Road. So he's coming up here. This would be on the exact road to Dakshineshwar. So this was the mosque at that time. This is from Swami Chidekananda's book. This is Chitpur Road, Kolkata, 1890. So it was a kind of a, Sri Ramakrishna, like Maharaj wrote, he came up and down this road many times. In fact, whenever he visited from Dakshineshwar to Kolkata, he mainly used this road. And you can see the wide road. So you can just imagine Sri Ramakrishna in his horse carriage coming across like seeing somebody on the street in twilight. This is the mosque today. So at that time it was one story. Today it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5. Just to conclude our talk about Islam and Dakshineshwar, Sri Ramakrishna, it's mentioned in the Gospel of Kathamrita that in January 1st, 1883, the mother reveals herself to her devotees in different forms. She came to me another day as a Muslim girl, 6 or 7 years old. She had a tilak on her forehead and was naked. She walked with me, joking and frisking like a child. Now let's cover the history of Sri Ramakrishna and Christianity in Dakshineshwar. Okay. So here's another question, although now I feel hesitant to ask questions because nobody's giving any responses this time. What was the name of the church or churches which Sri Ramakrishna had visited in Kolkata? So if anybody could get this, let's say Swami Hari Namananda will give a free class from Vedanta Life Academy in the future. You have to name both churches if there were both churches. So this is a really interesting story about Sri Ramakrishna and Christianity, because all the other gods and goddesses Sri Ramakrishna worshipped in Dakshineshwar, he already had prior exposure to them in Kamarpukur. Even Islam, because Islam is part of India. But Christianity, he did not have so much exposure to. At least we do not find any evidence of it. So when was his first exposure with Christianity? It's getting cut off. So it was about 1868 or 1869. This is called today the Osmond Memorial Church, formerly the Wesleyan Methodist Church, established 1868. So actually, I went here last year, Christmas Day, I went here, Christmas Eve. And it was really interesting because I talked with the priest who's in charge of this church. And he told me that many devotees, bhaktas of Sri Ramakrishna, come to this church just because of its association with Sri Ramakrishna. This is a picture of the inside of the church. So they come here, they sit and they meditate. So what happened was, Sri Ramakrishna was staying in Jan Bajar with Mathur Babu, and it was either coming from Dakshineshwar to Jan Bajar or whatever, on the way there or returning to Dakshineshwar. So this is Rani Rashmani's Bhavan. Last time we talked about this in our last talk. So Rani Rashmani used to live here, and Sri Ramakrishna would also come and visit here with Mathur Babu. And it's actually here that he practiced his Vaishnav sadhana, including dressing like a lady, those types of sadhanas that he practiced. They took place here. So one day, as Sri Ramakrishna was leaving Rani Rashmani's Bhavan and returning to Dakshineshwar, they stopped in front of the church. They said Sri Ramakrishna did not enter inside. He just stood at the door and watched inside. After Sri Ramakrishna had completed his sadhana, what year was that? 1872. Last time we talked about that. During the Sodashi Puja, he offered the fruits of his sadhana to Holy Mother. Then around 1874, he used to visit one of his devotees, Shambhu Malik. This is a rare picture taken from Swami Chidekananda's book. And again, this building is no longer in existence. There's maybe like a palm tree in its site. But Sri Ramakrishna used to come here and he would interact with Shambhu Malik, and he would read to Sri Ramakrishna passages from the Bible. So Swami Prabhanandaji was speculating in his book that this is probably one of the first times that Sri Ramakrishna had some real exposure to the teachings of Christ. This was around 1874. This is right near Dakshineshwar. Then in 1875, Jadu Malik's garden house. It's located right here, right next to the Dakshineshwar premises. On our map, it would be just about right here. So at that time, this is a picture of the original building that Jadu Malik stayed in. And Sri Ramakrishna would visit here. I think it was the second or third floor on this side. There was a picture of Christ, Mother Madonna, Mother Mary, holding baby Jesus. I'll just read from the great master what happened. One day, suffused with the thought and spirit of Jesus Christ, Sri Ramakrishna was sitting alone in the parlor of Jadunath Malik's garden house. On the walls of the room, some paintings, including the Virgin Mary with the baby Jesus. As he was looking intently at it, he felt the picture becoming living and luminous, and that rays of light struck forth from the mother and child and entered into his heart. But what happened afterwards was even more interesting. The new thought wave radically pushed aside his old pet beliefs and ideas, just as it had happened during his practice of Islam. And he speaks about this experience. Rising with great force, the waves of those impressions completely submerged the Hindu ideas in his mind. His love and devotion for the devas and devis vanished, and in their stead, a great faith and reverence for Jesus and his religion occupied his mind. And he started to see in his vision picture of the Christian fathers praying to Christ and offering incense to them. So for the next 3 days, he was fully absorbed in the thought of Jesus Christ. So what happened at that time? Again, he like during his Islamic sadhana, he had all his pictures of his gods and goddesses removed from his room, and he just thought about Christ. So at the conclusion of 3 days, he was one day strolling in the Panchavati, thinking about Christ, when he saw a luminous figure approaching him. He thought the visitor must be a foreigner, for he was of very fair complexion, had long eyes with uncommon brilliance, and the tip of his nose was a little flat. He embraced Sri Ramakrishna and merged into him. This is one of the oldest pictures of Christ. We did some research on the net. One of the oldest pictures of Christ, 6th century. And you could see that it does depict him, the tip of his nose is flat. Just to add to that point, in the Leela Prasanga, Swami Chidekananda did research, and he read from a book, Frederick William Farrar's Life of Christ, and he also found at that time that he had written this book in the 18th century, an expert Christian theologian. He also described that the tip of Christ's nose was flat. But the story does not end there, because during his lifetime, at least 2 Indian Christians would come to Thakur. One was named William. In about 1882, he came to see Sri Ramakrishna, 1881, I think with Kedarnath Chattopadhyay. And when he first saw Sri Ramakrishna, he was an Indian Christian. He immediately bowed down and kissed the feet of Sri Ramakrishna. And he started weeping. And Sri Ramakrishna asked him, "What do you see?" He said, "I see Christ in you. I see you as Christ." And after that, they said that he renounced the world and took up his sadhana. And one other Indian Christian in the year 1885, it was at Shampukur Bhatti. He also, he came to see Sri Ramakrishna, and he also, this is in the Kathamrita, he also said that, "I see you as Christ." He had visions of Sri Ramakrishna ever before meeting him. And then when he went to meet him in Shampukur Bhatti, he was weeping, and he said, "I see you as Christ, bless me." And so you can read about that in Shampukur Bhatti in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, or the Kathamrita. Now the first church was the Osman Memorial Church. The second church was the Holy Trinity Church on Amherst Street. It said that, this is in the Gospel, on March 11th, 1882, Sri Ramakrishna had asked the Divine Mother that he would like to visit a Christian church to see how they pray. But he was afraid, because if he goes inside the church, the fuss, will they allow him to return to the Kali temple afterwards? So what he did, sometime in 1882, he went to this church and just stood at the door. So a couple of years ago, during Easter time, I entered inside the church because it's associated with Thakur. And another thing about this church, this is one of the first churches in West Bengal to actually have the sermons and the prayer books in Bengali. So you can just try to put yourself, imagine, so Sri Ramakrishna standing at the foot of the door, looking inside and seeing the inside of the church. And I think we're almost done. This is to conclude, this is the Dakshineshwar main gate. During Sri Ramakrishna's, this is it today. And this is during Sri Ramakrishna's time. So whoever comes from Kolkata, this is the, let's see the main gate. So on your map, this is the main gate. So Kolkata is on this side, okay? So if you're coming from Kolkata, you'll enter through this main gate. And if you're coming from Dakshineshwar, if you're coming from the boat, you'll enter right here. So lots of people, this is Bagh Bazaar, Kolkata's down here. The Ganga goes north, south. This heads towards the Bay of Bengal. So at the end of here, Bay of Bengal, Ganga Sagar is there. That's a holy pilgrimage place. They say that's where the Ganga ends and it merges into the Indian Ocean. So that's a very holy place. So many pilgrims, even today, they come from there and then they come to Dakshineshwar. So anyways, the boat comes, you can come one of two ways, here or through Kolkata. And so you see that Sri Ramakrishna entered, the devotees entering from the main gate. One interesting thing about here, one time, I think it was Hriday, he was kicked out of the temple premises because he had worshipped, he had done something inexcusable. So he could no longer enter into the temple premises. So you might recall that Sri Ramakrishna one day, Hriday was standing at the gate. So Sri Ramakrishna came from his room and he went all the way to the main gate to meet Hriday. And Hriday was standing here and he was weeping. You might recall that he was, when he was staying with Sri Ramakrishna, he was very mean towards him and quite arrogant. Then when Sri Ramakrishna went to meet him, Hriday was weeping, saying, you know, I want to come with me. I want to be with you again. And then Sri Ramakrishna asked him, but you said that you couldn't make it on your own. You said that you didn't need me. So the amazing thing is that it was amazing how Sri Ramakrishna acted. We could put ourselves in his place. How do we act if somebody treats us really meanly? They act very badly towards us for many years. They said he acted so bad, so mean towards Sri Ramakrishna that at one time he even thought about ending his life. But you see what Sri Ramakrishna did, as he's returning back to his room, he had tears in his eyes. He's weeping for Hriday. And he's trying to even then make arrangements to help Hriday out. So in conclusion, these pilgrimages, it's nice to see these different and visit these different places of pilgrimage. But I think more important than that, these are all nice meditations. But more important than that, and I've been trying to write different articles on this. Sri Ramakrishna is what you say in Bangla Babohar, how he acts with people. They use these terms, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, social intelligence. So it just reminded me of that, you know, in the Gita, it's there, in the Gita, Sthita pragyasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava, that famous sloka. How does a person act? How does a knower of Brahman walk? How does he talk? And then Shankara in his commentary says that their end state, how they act, how they walk, how they talk, their end state, that's our spiritual practice. So that's not only what I feel after visiting all these places and studying Sri Ramakrishna's life more deeply, it's not only restricted to his spiritual practice, it's how he interacts with people. And I think as we study his life more deeply, these are things that we can apply in our own life. How he interacts with people when they don't treat him well, how he handles a hostile audience, how he even speaks with people. I wrote an article about this, that sometimes we see religious preachers, they engage in something called a top-down, like speaking from the pulpit, speaking at the audience. But if you analyze Sri Ramakrishna, he never spoke his style was never top-down. It was always conversational. Even the way he gave his teachings, conversational. So with that, I conclude this pilgrimage to Dakshineshwar. And
if you have questions, why don't you raise your hand? And Subir will just, hopefully he'll call on you and we can get that. So if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand if you like. Please don't put them in the chat box because for whatever reasons, I cannot see the chat box this time. And Sabir, if there's anybody that raises their hands, please call, unmute them.
Yep. I'm waiting. There is no hands up as of now.
All right, okay.
Okay.
So,
So we have the
yours.
first hand, Mira.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Swamiji, I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the question this time is, you know, when you talked about those two folks who helped with Christianity, the two Indian folks, can you talk a little bit about Mr. Cook, who was there too, who met Thakur, but then I think Swamiji also had a chance to meet him in the US.
Yeah, I don't, I think that they met on a ship. They met on a ship, I think a steamer, I think Keshab Sen took him, but I actually don't know, I didn't follow too much up on that. I think they met on a ship in 1882. Keshab Sen took Sri Ramakrishna, and that time he met Mr. Cook. But no, I don't, I actually didn't follow up with that. I'm not sure about that.
So, okay, and if anybody else has any questions, go ahead and do that. Do you know where Holy Mother stayed? How tall is that, her place of residence?
They said it's 50 square feet. So I think the door seal where she used to is like only 5 feet. It's very low. And I think Mother was quite tall, like 5'5", 5'6". So because of that, when, like we said, like when her mother-in-law would call her, she would just start running. So it was really cute because when we were in PPTC, sometimes that our brahmacharis would go there. They said, this is the spot where Holy Mother used to hit her head. So they would salute that spot.
So, and also I heard, did anybody else live with Holy Mother during that time? When
Yeah, she had companions, including she used to, when she first came, it says that she used to have a maid servant stay with her. And then after that, she used to have about 3 or 4 companions, sometimes Gopalar Ma, Jogin Ma, Lakshmi Didi. Up to 3, 4 people would stay with her at one time.
And there was a place they said that there was a fence that separated because Holy Mother from Sri Ramakrishna's place. You didn't show where was the fence because they said she poked holes through a fence.
I did show that. Can I go back to share screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the place where she used to poke holes. This is the Nahabat where she stayed, and she used to watch. This is actually an old picture, and she used to poke holes through these like kind of bamboo curtains and watch Sri Ramakrishna from here. This is made from bamboo.
And so I see there's an upstairs. What's the upstairs used for?
This is actually this is the like what you say, a concert tower. So normally the Nahabat means musical concert tower. Remember that music that we played in the very beginning?
Yes.
Remember when that's Chennai music? That type of music comes from this type of concert tower. But the thing is that in Dakshineshwar, let me see if I can find it. There's actually another Nahabat. You can see this picture right here. There's 2 Nahabats on the property. Okay, here's one, and you can see right here. There's another. This is another one, and so the music would usually be played from here.
I see.
But do you understand that? So that was like, I mean that's quite a rare picture. So this is, they said Holy Mother used to poke holes in here, and look at the activities taking place in Sri Ramakrishna's room.
So would there be someone then playing? So this Nahabat, I mean,
Yeah, that takes place in the morning time and evening time. You know,
so
before
Holy Mother be there while someone is playing that?
But that Chennai music takes place in the early morning and evening time.
Right, but I'm saying it was Holy Mother. So,
But I don't think it was played in her where she lived. There's a second Nahabat, which I just showed you.
I see. Okay.
There's a second Nahabat it's right here. You can see it kind of right here. Can you see that?
Right.
There's two Nahabats. This is one right here. This is the second right here.
I got you. All right.
In fact, when Master Mahoshai, when he wanted to stay in Dakshineshwar for a few days, Sri Ramakrishna initially thought that he would like to stay in this place because he has a poetic type of temperament, so he could look at the Ganga. But he preferred to be near Sri Ramakrishna, so he stayed somewhere near here.
There's a place where Sri Ramakrishna, I apologize, you may have said this, but there's a lot of things that were going on. But there's a place where Ramakrishna was walking back and forth where he was asking, where are my devotees? Where are my devotees? Where was that place?
Yeah, I'll show you.
And by the way, if anybody has any other questions, please raise your hand if you like.
Right here. Okay. This is the. Remember we talked about the kutir body. Remember that? This is Sri Ramakrishna's room right here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is where he used to stand on top of this roof right here.
I see.
And he would cry to his devotees, and we could not get to it, but we did a lot of research on this. That 12 of his 16 direct disciples lived in northern Kolkata at that time. In fact, so he used to stand on this roof, or he used to Kotai Ashish, I. So he used to cry for his devotees for a long time, since like the Divine Mother showed to him that many of his own disciples would be coming to him. But actually, it didn't happen for a long time. So even during Mathur Babu's time, and Mathur Babu passed away, I think in 1872, 1871, he used to ask Sri Ramakrishna, where are your devotees? We're waiting for them. And Sri Ramakrishna was not sure when they would come. So actually this last stage, we didn't get to it today, but this last stage of his, we actually talked about this, that in every incarnation's life, you have 4 types of experiences. After the sadhana, you enter into society to try to understand and to alleviate the suffering of others. But there's a 4th stage, creating your own disciples and transmitting the spiritual powers unto them. So that was this 4th stage, which we did not get to today. That's a whole nother talk. But anyways, this is where that took place, the kutir body.
And when I look at this here, can you tell how many, because there's so many different deities that are there. So you talked about, you have your 12 Shiva lingas. Let's just kind of like review. So how many deities are actually present in Dakshineshwar? Because it's a multitude of various deities from throughout the Hindu pantheon.
Right.
So what are the deities you have?
So there's mainly this, Mother Kali is here.
Right.
And then Krishna, Radha is here.
Yes.
And Rani Rashmani's family deities are also here. I think including Ramlal. She had a family deity, Ramlal.
So
Ramji.
Okay.
And some other of her family deities. And then this, the 12 Shiva lingas right here.
So now, do you have priests during Ramakrishna's time? Do you have priests for each one of these temples?
Yes. Remember we talked about it last time. Sri Ramakrishna was the first priest of the Radha Krishna temple, Radha Krishna Mandir first. And then afterwards, he was the priest for the Dakshineshwar Kali temple.
And then also, then does each Shiva linga, there's 12 Shiva lingas there. Do they each have their own individual priest?
Yes.
I see. It's quite a huge. And where did Rani Rasmani, did she stay in the property also?
Yeah, she stayed this kutir body. We talked about, this is the kutir body right here. She stayed here. So let's just go back there. I'll show you. Okay. This is the kutir body, right? So you're able, can you identify that on the map? This is it. So this is where she lived. And this is also where Sri Ramakrishna, this is the roof where Sri Ramakrishna would have stood on and cried for his devotees.
Okay. There's one question there.
Yep.
Here, if you could, go ahead.
Yes, Maharaj, there's a question on the chat first. Let me just ask you that, a quick one. Was Shambhu Malik converted to Christianity?
I don't believe so. I don't have any evidence about that. I think he was a Hindu, but I think he had I can't say for sure, but I think that he, see his picture. I think he was a Hindu, but he had a strong liking for Christ.
We have a hand raised by Nandini and Tirthankar Banerjee. You can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Pranam Maharaj, I have a question regarding the Panchavati, the picture that you showed. There are the 5 trees, right?
Yes.
Ashok, Bod, Billo, and Bell.
Yes.
So you showed the bell trees separately, and we
No, we saw
saw.
all of them together. Yeah.
Are all these 5 trees together? This was my question, because the bot itself is so huge. So
No, they're separate trees. You just plant them together. So that's why they call it the Panchavati. It's like considered a holy place to do meditation. They're all separate, but they plant them together in the same place. Let's go back to that. So you see, there's the different. It's hard to tell from this picture, but there's the different types of trees here, right?
Okay.
And but you can't really tell which is which. But Panchavati means that they're all a cluster of trees planted together in the same place. But mainly when you sit, he would sit under the bot tree, right? The banyan tree.
Okay. And Billo is the
Billo, the bell. This is what you actually offer. This is associated with Lord Shiva.
Shiva.
And this is associated. Actually, interesting, because Krishna's body was also in not Dwaraka. Was it Prabhas? It was also cremated under the people tree, Ashwatha tree. And I believe, yeah. And I think if someone could correct, I think that Buddha also, I think he sat under, was it Ashwatha or Bot tree in Bodh Gaya? I think it was a bot tree. I think, if anybody knows, I think it was a bot tree.
Okay. And he did his.
And this tree is associated with Sita, Ashoka tree.
Oh yes, of course. And really the sadhana, right? Tantric. Maharaj, and the tantric sadhana was done under the bell tree, right?
Bell tree, right. We'll go back to that. You can see. And it's really amazing. I don't know. Today the tree is only like this high. So during Sri Ramakrishna's time, to really get an idea and of how large this is. I mean, I've never seen a bell tree this large. No, we do have some large bell trees in Bellarmont, but today's bell tree is maybe like this high. You can see. It's like a very small tree. Comparing that with this. See? Really great.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
And I see one question. It's asked from Deepak. Is it Kutir Bari or Kuti?
Kutir Bari. Kutir Bari.
Kutir Bari. Okay.
Kutir Bari.
All right. Subi, there's another question.
Susan, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes. I may have missed it, not sure, but did Sri Ramakrishna's brothers ever, siblings ever come to the Dakshineshwar temple for worship or
yes,
any
actually,
kind of activity?
Yes. I know that's a good question. Actually, his eldest brother, Ram Kumar Chattopadhyay, he first came here. He first came on 31st of May, 1855. He brought Sri Ramakrishna with him. So he was the priest of the Dakshineshwar Kali temple from about the first week of June, 1855 to the middle of 1856. He passed away in 1856. Before he passed away, he was training his brother, Sri Ramakrishna, his younger brother, to be the priest to the Dakshineshwar Kali temple. And his other brother, I don't know if he ever came or not. Because his other brother actually had to maintain the the house in Kamarpukur. Who's going to maintain that house? So he's there, he's taking care of the puja there. They had family deities there, and they only had 3 brothers. But what happened afterwards is that Sri Ramakrishna's eldest brother's son, Akshay, he came to Dakshineshwar and he stayed with Sri Ramakrishna. And he was the priest, I think, for the Radhakrishna temple. And in the year 1869, he passed away in this Kutir Badi. He passed away. And after that is Sri Ramakrishna's next middle older brother, what's his name? Rameshwar. His son Ramlal came, and he stayed with Sri Ramakrishna too.
Thank you. Maharaj, there's a request saying to show the place again in Dakshineshwar temple where Thakur warned Mother Kali not to lean too much on the railing so she would fall.
Oh, that was in that. I think that was in the video actually. Anyway, it was like, let's see. So it would be, she went to the upper floor right here, and she's moving around like right here. This upper part right here.
Okay.
What is in those upper parts? So we see the lower part is the Mother Kali is there. So what's in the upper parts there?
I don't think there's anything there. I think it's just a hallway there. I don't think they use it for anything in particular.
And do you know why they this Nahabat, why do they have separate, so you have the temple, and then there's a separation with where the people sit. So why is there a separation there?
Well, what do you mean separate? You mean here, the Nat Mandir?
Yes, the Nat Mandir and the temple. So there's a sense of there's a separation. They're 2 distinct buildings.
Yeah. I think that this was I'm not actually really sure why. I think that was the style. I think that was partly the style at that time, not Mandir. That this is like that literally means dance hall, and they used to have many programs there. So I'm not actually quite sure why they would have the separation. But one thing is very clear, that when they perform these jatras, these plays in the Nat Mandir, it would be not for the sake of the people watching. All these events taking place even here, they're for the sake of the Divine Mother. So she should be able to see. So when you're performing that she can see. So even when you go to Dakshineshwar, the Nat Mandir, even from the very back, you can clearly see her if there's nobody there. So, like on Durga Puja Day, on Vijaya Dashami Day in Belur in front of the Ganga, they'll be dancing in front of the Holy Mother's temple. So it's actually for the enjoyment of the mother. Mother wants to see these things. So that's all these things she done here are for her sake. So why the separation? I don't know. That might have been the style at that time.
Right. All right.
Maharaj, thank you so much.
So thank you.
There's no other hands at the moment, but there's another request on chat. Maybe this is for a subsequent program, is to do a pilgrimage presentation of Kamarpukur and Mother's places, along with other places Thakur visited in Kolkata. Maybe in the next program. It seems.
Swami Chidekananda, are you there?
Seems he's frozen.
Okay, so we may, so this is, I think, is the way the Divine Mother telling us that the pilgrimage is over, all right? And in any journey, there are going to be obstacles, just like I talked about. We had our obstacles today, and we have to, that's part of the journey. And that's what creates, that's what purifies us. And, but I want to thank Swami Chidekananda for doing this. There are a series of articles that he has written, and let me just share that with you where you can find them. Let me just get out of here. If you go to San Diego Vedanta.org, our San Diego website, And let me share a screen here. If you go here, you'll see that this is the San Diego Vedanta.org website. And if you go to sort of the bottom of the screen here, you'll see that Swami Chidekananda did a thing called Pilgrimage as Yoga. And that was last year. And he talked about basically how you should conduct a pilgrimage. What's the mindset you should have when you do a pilgrimage, and to get the most, to actually see the living darshan of the Lord. And then there's a series of 5 articles, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 6 articles that he had written in Vedanta Keshari. And you can click on it, and then you can actually see the article itself. And so this article is called Sri Ramakrishna and the Pilgrimage Mindset. Again, that's on San Diego Vedanta.org. So I want to thank Swami Chidekananda ji, a wonderful job. I want to thank all of you for attending. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap this year. We've had a wonderful year with everybody in our Vedanta Life Academy.